It's episode 73 of Chit Chat, and while some games are just classic, there are others that are considered modern classics. Tonight, we run down some of our personal top 10 board games released in the last 5 years. Let's do this. Welcome back, everyone, to Chit Chat episode 73. This is a special episode, not only because it was supposed to be last week, but we are going to do a top 10 modern classics. Is that what we're calling it, everybody?
That's what we're calling it.
And as you can see, we have Jeremy Howard here joining us. You don't see Kira, but we promise she's here. I'm looking at her right now, but she's mysteriously in the background. But we're going to be talking about our personal top 10s, and these are games that have been released, since 2016 and beyond, or something like that?
Yep.
So these are games that we think, at least for myself, I'll speak for myself, that are my personal favorites, things that I think I'll be playing in a long time, but not necessarily you or Jeremy or Ryan or Kira. But before we get to any of that in any greater detail, we have a winner from last episode.
Right. We gave away a copy of Alone from Horrible Games. That is going to Joe Roberts. So email. Fort. Everyone's talking about Fort, so this is like a perfect time.
One of my favorite games this year.
I like Fort a lot.
To be entered to win, all you have to do is make a comment today, and you're entered. That easy.
Nice.
All right, so let's start. Let's go around. I don't care. I'm not sure if we have these in order, so does anyone want to start? Anyone want to volunteer to start? And as we start, Ryan, okay, you could start, but as we start, let's talk about what was our criteria and then get into your number 10.
Yeah, I'm going to say right off the bat that this is not like these are not my 10 favorite games. I don't know if any of you picked your 10 favorite games, but these are games that I think are classics because a lot of people like them and because I feel like I can safely say to anybody, get this game, you're probably going to enjoy it, and it's probably going to be still on shelves for years to come. That being said, my first number 10 is actually a little bit of a cheat because it falls a little bit out of the window by just like a couple months.
Already breaking the rules.
It released at the very end of the year, but that's Dead of Winter. And I think Dead of Winter still deserves to be on this list. Whether or not we still like Dead of Winter now because we've grown so much as gamers and the hobby's grown, that's all debatable. But the game itself did a lot for hobby gaming, and it is still in print. People are still buying Dead of Winter and playing it all the time, and new expansions are still coming out. I would say that this game kind of brought a resurgence into zombie games and horror games in the board game market. So definitely, I think deserves to be called a classic, whether or not you're a fan of the game or not.
Yeah, it's also one of the first games that introduced a really good. I mean, there's always been games that have narrative, but that introduced like really strong narrative within the game as well for that type of game. So it's pretty cool. Who wants to go next? Jayhow?
Jayhow, why don't you go?
Oh, okay. I had my first one, and by the way, my criteria was basically games that I didn't want to go with the games that I know would be in the stores. I didn't want to go I wanted to go with games that I know that people would recommend to other people, like in gaming groups and things like that. So I did a lot of crowdsourcing to go into this because I was just thinking like, all right, I know what's going to be in the stores. I'm a pretty good judge of that. But what's going to be the ones that people say, hey, I like this game. Maybe what would be my next game? Or, hey, I like this deck builder. I tried it, whatever. Like, so I try to think of those games and also like the solo games because I'm a solo gamer too. So try to put all those together. And there's some heavyweights. So with that being said, the first one is a deck builder. That is the Quest for Eldorado. It's a deck building game where you're basically racing. You're racing from one side of the board to the other side of the board, and you're playing cards with a small hand and buying them from another set of cards. The reason why I like that game, and I think it's going to be well known, is one, it's never really in stock. First of all, that lets me know that it's going to be there for a while, and they keep coming out with expansions, and it keeps making the game better. And I think it just keeps coming up, and it keeps showing up. And I haven't heard one person really say anything bad about it. And it's just one of those. It's a Knizia game. Some of those they stick out. So he has loyalist fans, but this one is actually one that sticks out amongst those titles. So, yeah, it's very memorable, at least for me. I know it is. That newest one that they have, the newest expansion they have, which is really a standalone. It's amazing. So I mean, I'm
How many expansions do they have for that now?
this is the third one.
Really?
No, sorry.
Wow.
Yeah, this is the third. This is the second expansion too. Yeah, and they're all standalone, really. So you can combine them together as well and make a huge race if you want. But the third one kind of deters from that. It's not necessarily the same race element. There's actually 3 guys that you got to move. So it's really interesting. They do such a good job with that design.
A Spiel nominee once upon a time, right? The original?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
I believe so. Yeah. But the third one is just fantastic. Oh my gosh. And it just came to stores recently. I've had it for a while now, and it's just, it's great. So if you're looking for that, I think that one's going to be around for a while.
Cool.
It's going to be around for a while.
Cool.
All right, I will go next, and we'll finish off with Jeremy, and then let's try to keep that order for the rest of the night if we can.
Okay.
Give you a brief description on how I approached this. I approached it from all different directions. I started with sort of my favorite games, unlike Ryan said, but then I also considered the kind of things Ryan was talking about, like what games will people be recognizing in more of a general sense. And a little bit of like what Jeremy just said, things that you could always recommend, that sort of thing. So with that said, my first one, or number 10, if you will, is Quacks of Quedlinburg. I think I can't even remember what year this came out now. I think it was 2017. But this thing came onto the scene, and I don't know that it's revolutionary in any way, shape, or form, but it hit a chord that I don't think a lot of other games had hit right at that moment. It has a lot of luck, obviously, built into it. But the year that came out, everyone was playing it, and it was one of those games where you just have a lot of fun. And I've always said this, but I've found more and more that is easily, this kind of maybe sounds silly, but it's easily my number one criteria is, am I having fun? Like a game can make all sorts of gears turn in my head, but if I'm not having fun, it doesn't really end up being a game I want to play long term. But Quacks of Quedlinburg is a great game. They keep coming out with expansions for this too. In fact, I think there's a new one coming out before the end of this year. They had the Witches, I think, last year, and then between now and the end of the year, they have another one coming out. And I haven't even played with Witches yet, but
cool.
That's my number 10.
All right. This is interesting because all 3 of the games you guys picked, I don't own. And actually, all the games that I picked, I own. But they're not necessarily the games that I love the most. I try to pick games that I felt, kind of like all of you guys here, games that I felt that I could introduce to just about anybody, or fell on this barrier where they're either easy or they're popular. And so I kind of try to ride that line throughout. My number 10 was Just One. And I'm not typically a party game person. In fact, I think this was introduced to me by David at Gen Con, because I think you sat down to play this at Gen Con, right? It's a party game. And basically you have a word that one person knows or doesn't know, and everyone else at the table knows, and you're trying to guess that by everyone writing a single word and then eliminating words that are doubles. It sounds very simple, and it is very simple, but it's very fun. And I think this is a game that's going to be around for years. It's been around for 2 years now. I think its first expansion is finally going to come out at the end of this year, which is just more words. I mean, you can't really do much to it, but more words is all you really need for this game. It could actually be played with a piece of paper and pencil. Like, you don't need to buy the game, but it's very fun. Anybody can play this. And when I say anybody, my parents are not gamers. They are, but they're not like the kind of games that I would typically play. And this is a game that I've taken to my family and played multiple times. In fact, every single holiday I take this to them, and they love it. So that's Just One.
That is a brilliant choice.
That's a great choice.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Much as I use it in my job, I should you put it on my list and I did it. I use it in my job, teach communication and teamwork.
The thing about that, Jeremy, I think, which makes it an easy candidate for this list, and something that I'd kind of overlooked when I was putting my list together, is that is absolutely one of those games that when you played it, almost everyone goes, how did no one ever think of this game before? Just like people said about Code Names when it came out, and that's a great candidate for this sort of list, I think.
Yep. All right, 9. Ryan.
All right, number 9 for me is Scythe, and this is a game that maybe I don't personally love, but I think it has made a huge impact on the industry. There are gaming groups that exist where they just get together and play Scythe. We even have one at our local game store, and they meet almost weekly to play Scythe. It's undeniable how much of an impact this game has had on the landscape of board games as far as design goes, and it really catapulted, I think, Stonemaier Games up.
Sure.
And I feel like I don't see the popularity of Scythe dwindling. I think more people are starting to adopt the game. New expansions are still coming out, and people are still talking about that game like it just came out. And so I think that this is going to be one probably at least for the next 5 or so years, people are still going to be talking about and still playing.
Yep. We talk about evergreens a lot. Our publishers really talk about evergreens, and that's one of those games that, as you said, it's an evergreen, meaning that they're going to be able to sell this to new gamers forever.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I came back into the hobby, that was around this time. So Scythe was one of the bigger board games that kind of like my, not first year old, but it was like in that big, kind of like I went big in the board games. And when I had Mage Knight, I also bought this about half year later. And this was my go-to, one of my first solo games, this held me down for a while. I moved on from it, but definitely held me down.
Cool. What's your 9?
My number 9 is, of course, the game I think that represents asymmetry. It is Root. Root is one strong card game. Well, like it or not, it is one of the strongest card games I've played. But of course, it's area skirmish, and there's just something about that game. It is complex, but at the same time, really, actually, kind of easy to learn. It's easy to learn how to navigate the field and things like that. It just comes down to the asymmetry and how you use those cards and the difference in the factions. It's just such a smart design. As you even add more expansions to it and it gets more difficult, it's still so fun. And now they have a digital version, and they don't have any of the expansions in the digital version. I just played it on the channel last week, Saturday, by the way. If you just want to check it out, the digital version, which is amazing. It makes me want to play the game even more, and it makes you better at the game. It actually teaches you how to play the game, each faction. So if you're a little worried about how to learn how to play it, and you may have had it since forever, you may want to look at it, get the digital version and try it out. But I just think that game is a modern classic, and I know people, have some things with maybe balancing or whatnot. I don't have a problem with it because I'm not that good at it. So, but one thing I do know is that Root belongs in the hierarchy of games, and it is definitely a modern classic in my eyes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good pick. My next pick is a little more personal. I think this is the kind of pick that some of you will go, I don't know if that's a modern classic for me. However, this was a big release that kind of gained steam after it had come out, and it's Vindication. This game looks visually, at first glance, like some sort of big Ameritrash style game, but it is the Euroist of Euros. It's really a cube pusher, and as crazy as it sounds, the theme of it just makes sense to me. I've loved teaching it. The gameplay lets you score points in a variety of different ways. There are some low-hanging fruits in terms of points to grab, and that's usually the first time anyone plays, they go that route. But then I've played other games where I've scored even more points going a different route, and it had some really inventive mechanics that may have just been sort of, they didn't have a massive impact. I don't know that they're revolutionary and they will be copied, but one of the things about it that every time I teach it, people are like, oh, that's cool, is that end game trigger that keeps coming out. So you start with an end game trigger, and then if you get to a certain point on the scoreboard, another end game trigger comes out, and then another one. So the game can potentially end before you think it might at any moment once people start going around that score track. But yeah, Vindication, and they've got an expansion, and I think they've got another expansion coming out early next year, or at least on Kickstarter.
Cool. That game is going to keep expanding. It's got to keep expanding.
It's got so much already. I can't believe that
there is a lot of content for Vindication, for
sure.
It's
a ton of content. I've never played it with all.
I just think they have an opportunity to keep adding on to that game. It
Yeah.
just feels like it no matter what, because it's kind of abstract, but they really do want to tell a story with it a little bit. So it's like you never know what they'll come up with next, and it'll probably be very much welcomed with a fan base.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right. My number 9. This is only my second or one of two heavier Euros that I have on my list. It's Lorenzo Il Magnifico. One of my absolute favorite Euro games of all time. It is absolutely fantastic. And in fact, there is a new, finally, expansion. Not expansion. Well, it doesn't have an expansion, but Grand Austria Hotel has an expansion. These designers are so good. I mean, all the stuff that they do is just remarkable. And I could go through a laundry list of games, but I'll let you guys look at all the stuff they did. Lorenzo stands to be probably my favorite multiplayer game. Now, I don't like playing it 4, but 3-player is like perfect. And with its first expansion, I know there's going to be another expansion down the line. I kind of spoiled that, but this game is so good. Like the dice manipulation in this, you're rolling dice and everyone's drafting and using those dice in different ways with their family members. And there's different tracks that you're trying to go up. There's competitions on this middle track to be able to do very specific things. And you're trying to balance all these different things with the cards. And there's just these four stacks of cards that you're trying to draft from as well. There's just a lot of cool things going on in this game. And I think that Lorenzo, out of all the games that they've done, is probably the one game that has stuck with me. Like it's the one game I could play with anyone. It's just very, very easy. Now, I will say, I had my very first experience playing this as a 5-player game at the CMON Expo a couple years ago, and it was awful. Like it was with 4 brand new players. Besides myself, the 4 new players and myself, it was like a 3.5 hours to play. It was just very, very long. So
playing with new players is rough sometimes.
Yeah, but as far as Euros go, it's very, very easy to teach, and it's probably one of the few games out of all the heavier Euros that are out there that I would feel comfortable teaching to new people. So, Lorenzo.
You'd feel that same way about Grand Austria, though, right? In terms of teaching to new people, I've always felt that way.
I would. I have some issues with Grand Austria when it comes to 3 or 4 players, the way the turn structure works, but probably very similar. Although I think Lorenzo is a little more easy to digest, just because you're drafting from 3 colors of dice. Like that's basically what you're doing the entire game.
All right, number 8.
Yep.
Before you go, Ryan, I'm going to just make a prediction here. I think this is where we're going to finally get into crossover territory.
Probably.
Because so far, 9 and 10, we've all been different. So let's see how it goes.
I guarantee there's going to be some crossover as we get higher. But my number 8 is Role Player. This is just a great game. I mean, Role Player is simple enough that new players can come in. It's kind of based on Dungeons and Dragons, which a lot of people play. So it's very easy to bring in people that have some role-playing game experience into Role Player and teach them the game, or people that just pick it up off its shelf. I mean, it's fun to play. It's a dice drafting game. You don't have to make a ton of paralyzing decisions on your turn, but the decisions you have are meaningful, and there is a lot of comboing and a lot of ways to manipulate your dice. And that makes it, I think, very satisfying to hardcore gamers as well. Role Player is a game I can play with the casualist gamer, and we can both come out of it having a very satisfying experience. And then when you start to add on some of the expansions that came out, and of course, obviously, they branched a whole universe with role player adventures coming out soon. So I think that the brand, at least, is not going away anytime soon, and I think people are going to continue to look at Role Player itself as kind of the grandfather that started all of this.
Yep. Cool.
My little argument.
We got a lot of games to get through, Ryan. We can't talk.
I know.
I'm
just saying, like,
I will say, I like that one a lot better with the expansion than I did when it was just its original base game. But they've made that better and better for sure.
I think if we disagree, someone will say it. I don't think anyone disagrees with Role Player.
I don't think anybody's going to disagree with these games. These are great games. These are not to be played around with. Speaking of which, a great game. This is A Feast for Odin, which I thought was 2015, but I was like, oh no, it wasn't, because I spent in-store money for that. That was like $105 in the store.
Yeah, it wasn't cheap.
Yeah, it's a big one.
The beast. and I got rid of it. I made a mistake and got rid of it, so I went and bought it again just recently. I was like, I don't know why I got rid of this game. What was I doing back then? I must have been just trading everything. This is one of the best worker placement games. It is one of Uwe's best games. I think it might be his best.
I so badly want to say something.
Yeah.
I so badly want to say something.
What do you want to say?
I was just talking to David the other day about the Uwe games, and this is the one game I'll probably get rid of. Probably in the same boat as you. Well, you know what? I named Feast for Odin my number one game the year it came out. And what year was that? 2017?
16,
maybe?
I think
was it 16?
16.
Whatever year it was. I named it my number one game of the year, and I've played it so little since then. And I've played all the other Rosenberg games, Caverna, Agricola, just recently Hallertau. I played Anushford. All of these games I just really loved. There's something about Feast for Odin that's just more complex than I feel like it needs to be. I feel like he took everything that we love and he just put it together, and it all works fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But when you have that many worker placement spaces on the board, it tends to be an overload for people that aren't familiar with the system.
Absolutely.
I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. I just felt. Oh, go ahead.
And I was gonna say, just the expansion just added that much more to it. There's nothing wrong with the game. Like I as much as anyone else, I love Uwe games. Like I love all of his games, and I love Feast for Odin. But if I were to look at all of his games, all of them have everything that Feast for Odin has, but I like them in smaller chunks. I think that's why I'm keeping all the smaller chunks and not keeping Feast for Odin. And I wish I would have known that, because I would have given you my copy.
Yeah, it's a big game. It's a sprawling game, and I love games actually that feel like I have a sense of incompleteness to them. So like I can't get to all of it.
I love
but
that.
I want to get better at it. Like I want to figure out the puzzle for that. For me at least. Yeah. Because I'm the king of inefficiency, so it really works out well for me. I can just put stuff everywhere. So I'm using all those little coins and stuff, trying to get everything I can out of it, and of course it's not working. So I just think that game's a modern classic. It's going to stick around forever. And it will. This is actually one of those weird criteria where I would say, hey, Feast for Odin. They go, oh yeah, I've had that. I still have that, and that's the type of game that you keep in your collection. It just is.
Well, now I'm wondering. I'm wondering now.
You should keep it.
Yeah. All right, David.
All right. We're at number 8, and I am probably going to be the first person to put this on the list, but it's probably going to be on others. And I'm going to name Wingspan as my number 8. I think it's without question, and I won't go on and on because I'm sure we'll talk about it more tonight. But I think easily without question, Wingspan has very quickly established its place in sort of gaming history, if you will. This will absolutely be a game people talk about and it will be one of those evergreens. They've had one expansion. Another one is, I think, shipping. I'm starting to see it up on social media. It's a theme that I don't think any of us ever thought, oh yeah, I'm down for a bird game, but it's a lot of fun. I think the promise of it, the promise that it made early on of being kind of pushing the same sort of buttons as Terraforming Mars, but in a very compact experience, I think was somewhat true, although I kind of think they used that just to sell games at the time. But Wingspan is my number 8.
Cool. My number 8 is the series Unlock, or the Unlock series of games. Okay. I absolutely love this. All of you guys know I love this series of games. Kira knows it more than anyone because she was with me at Essen as I spent an entire day trying to hunt down an English version of the just released one, which it was a nightmare trying to find it. In fact, we walked away not getting a copy, but I just ordered from 365.uk, I believe is the name of it in UK, the Star Wars one, because I cannot wait for the US version. So I mean, I love Unlock. It's basically an escape room with cards. It's very simple, but they've been very clever in the way they've rolled these out through the years, and they get better and better. And now they're using like VR technology with the phones and stuff. I mean, they have elements of music in them. They're just really, really fun. And the great thing is they can be played with just about anybody. Again, like this can be, you could sit down with anyone of any age, walk them through the game system, and then it's just figuring out clues as you go, and everyone can participate. I don't know if it's great beyond 4 players, but from 1 to 4, it's a fantastic game. You don't have to spend $25 a person to go to an escape room. You spend, how much are these? $20 maybe?
Not even, like $15, I think.
Yeah, and you get 3 of them in one. It's just really cool. It's a really great game. So I highly suggest Unlock. I think it's a series that is going to be an evergreen for them. I think they can continue making these for years, and people will continue playing them.
All right. Number 7.
7.
Number seven for me is Everdell. You can take one look at this game and you can say that this is going to continue selling forever. People don't even need to look past the gorgeous box art. The fact that it comes with a cardboard tree that stands up out of the game, giving it a 3D element. This game definitely has table presence. And on top of that, it's actually a pretty cool little engine builder. It doesn't do anything too complicated, but it does serve as a great entry point for people, because people are going to come in, they're actually playing a Euro game, but they might not know it because the components are so nice. Everything is such a unique theme with like the fairy tale or forest creatures coming to life and, you know, being anthropomorphic and all that. But there's just a lot of game there that still appeals to me as a gamer. I would not hesitate to recommend Everdell to almost anybody that asks for it. And again, this is a common theme in my list. Another one of those evergreen titles. I think they can continue to print Everdell, and it will continue to sell well into the future.
I got to say one thing about Everdell. I agree with everything you said right there. They have so many expansions now that it makes me not want to play it. Like, I can't keep all that stuff. I can't track it all anymore. I have like 4 boxes, Belfast or whatever they're called.
Lot.
Yeah, they need a big box that can put it all together and tie it all together, because I'm at a point now where it's overload for me, and I have other games that I want to play, and the game is good, but it wasn't great enough. But I do think it is one of those games that, at least over the past 5 years, it's caught on like crazy for good reason.
I think that a lot of people will probably only ever just play the base box, will never even
It's probably true.
get into the expansions. And I think the game is maybe even better for that, but that's just my personal opinion.
Cool. Jay Howe.
This game, boy, this is a classic. There's no question. It's
Monopoly?
Teotihuacan.
Oh.
Teotihuacan is, my God, that game is so good. Oh man, it's so good. It's just so good. Like, here's the thing. There's one thing to have a game where you just do. It's really just you're doing simple things to get these die around, right? And then you have this beautiful tower, you know, like this temple, you know, thing. It's just a presentation of it. Looking at that temple build up, and what you're doing during that game. I'm like overwhelmed by this game. But anyway, I'll try to keep it short on this. What that game does is it gets better and better with expansion. And I like games that even if they get smaller expansions, that they actually make sense. Like, they're not just there, like they left it out of the base game, and you're like, oh man, they just tried to make some extra bucks. The things that they added in each one of those things, they actually added to the reward tracks. You know, they added activation spots. That game, it's going to stick around. And I don't know if they're going to add more expansions to it. They don't need to, because it's pretty much perfect now. But yeah, that one is one of the best Euro games I've ever played, ever. Yeah.
So do you like it, Jeremy?
Man, I love that game.
You know, I'm not gonna
we were thinking about Modern Clans. I was about to break it out, and then I had another big game on my table, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love this game!" And last time I played with most of the expansion stuff on it, and I was just like, "Oh, this game is never going anywhere. It is one of the best games, period."
I like Teo a lot. It didn't, spoiler alert, it didn't make it on my list because I do wonder about the staying power of it, especially just because Ticini is always coming out with so many great games. Like, for me, I'm already Teo's old news. I'm Tekenyu now, right? Like,
Team
and I wonder, like, I don't know that anything that he's done has reached the same level in my mind as Zolkin, but I don't know. Like, I think Teo's a great game, so don't get me wrong. I think it deserves to be on this list. I wonder if people are going to move on to the next Ticini. Well, we'll see.
I think everybody will move on because that's the nature of games go. But I think that this game will be in that collection of their favorites of that designer, much like I just talked about with Uwe, and I kind of looked at it that way too, because I know that this is going to be a list of, games that will be added to the classics. Well, if you like to see it,
Sure.
and this is going to be added to your classic,
Yeah.
so
I don't think you're wrong at all.
Yeah, I'm not wrong. It's my list.
Exactly.
Well, my number 7, I'm fairly certain none of you will think this is wrong to be included on this list.
Do.
Because I feel it is an absolute classic, because it did things that at least I'd never seen, and I think a lot of other people had never seen, and that's Clank. Clank took deck building and did with deck building something more than just the deck building itself. And to me, anyway, I found that to be brilliant. And I think a lot of people have followed suit with that. To use deck building as a mechanic to drive a lot more of a different game that's going on is just so much more fun. And it allows you to get a little bit more into the theme of the game. Because the deck building in and of itself, if you think about original deck builders, they're fairly abstracted games, obviously. But when you're using cards to move a piece around a board, and then you're going to a place on the board to accomplish things, but it's all still driven by the deck building, I thought it was perfect. And they've obviously, Clank has been huge. I mean, I would say without a doubt, that is Renegade's flagship property. Like, that is their game.
David, do you like Clank or Clank and Space better?
You know what? For this list, I would say Clank. And it's probably more of a property thing that I'm kind of putting it forth here. Sure. Personally, there were a couple. I haven't played Clank and Space for a very long time, but I remember there being a couple things that they did with Clank and Space that I thought were definite improvements over Clank.
For sure.
And I haven't played a lot of sort of, like, I know you guys played Clank Legacy. I haven't touched Clank Legacy.
Clank Legacy was great.
I don't know if they've taken some of those things they introduced in Space and brought them over to Clank, but I do think there were some smart things they did there. But the property's just huge. Like, I think Clank's going to keep going on for a very long time, and I think it's a great game to teach to people. It's a deck builder that people can wrap their heads around a little bit easier, because they are able to do visceral things on the table with their actions, as opposed to just collecting more cards and killing cards.
Yeah.
I think Clank is a great gift game.
Yeah.
I always tell people, like, it's a very solid gift. And especially if someone who's kind of already into board games just a little bit, they said they were interested in board games. You're like, I want to get them kind of a cool gift. Clank is a perfect gift. It is a perfect gift.
Well, my number 7 is probably not the perfect gift just because of the subject matter, but it's probably my favorite 2-player game. Not my favorite, because I have another one that's up higher, but it could be a multiplayer game.
Does it start with a W?
Watergate, yes.
Yeah.
Watergate's theme could be... The Watergate theme could be a barrier for people, obviously. Yeah. Like, most people aren't into the whole Nixon conspiracy and the Watergate scandal and all that stuff that happened. However, the game itself distills the things I love about 1960 and Twilight Struggle into a 30-minute card game that is very asymmetric, but can be played many, many times with different results. And it really depends on your strategy and how well you can manipulate things. And when I say different outcomes, I've played this game over 50 times, and I'm not lying about that. I've played this game probably more than any other game I've played in the past 2 years since this game came out. And I absolutely love it. And I still find different things that can happen at different times with the people that you play with. It's just a really, really good 2-player game. And if you can get past that barrier of getting through the historic timeline, if that doesn't capture your imagination, I think you'll find gameplay there that's really, really intriguing. And if they can rewrap this in some way, I mean, I think it's already on its 4th printing. So it's obviously selling, right? It's selling really, really well. But if they can rewrap this into a theme that can capture more people, I think this game could be an evergreen for years. And I think it could capture a lot of people's imaginations. They just need to wrap it in the right way. But I love Watergate. Fantastic.
It's interesting you bring that up. That's what I was waiting to say, is I think, do you guys feel that this is a game engine that could be almost effectively love lettered, where they just have like a bunch of different flavors of this game? Because I do think the game itself mechanically is just really fun to play as a great head-to-head back and forth tug of war game. And if you just put the right property on it, you get a whole swatch of new players to try it out.
Yep.
I just thought like Batman just randomly for that. I just thought about
Batman. I mean, you really could do just about anything. It just takes some creativity
really
to come up with the cards.
Yeah.
All right. 6.
Yep.
6 for me is Blood Rage. I don't know if you've heard of it. I don't know if I need to say anything else about Blood Rage. When this game came out, I think it took the landscape by storm.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just the sheer amount of buzz about Blood Rage, the sheer amount of people talking about Blood Rage. I mean, people still talk about Blood Rage and the impact that Blood Rage had when it came out. Like, it's not one of those games that I think, every gamer is going to play and have. I don't even know if it's still in print. So this is a little bit of an exception to what I said earlier. But I just think Blood Rage is going to be remembered for an indeterminable amount of time. I mean, people are still going to be talking about Blood Rage. It's a lot of people's favorite game. It's up there for me. It's a game that I really enjoy. I don't know if it's in my top 10, but I would never say no to Blood Rage. And I know that a lot of people out there feel the same way. And we kind of fondly look back at, just that was the birth of the big Kickstarters where they had so many add-ons. Now that's kind of a standard for CMON, but at that time it was just like so much content that you were getting and all those cool minis, and it was just a perfect storm, I think, of great design, great presentation, and great Kickstarter campaign. And I think it's going to stay in the collective consciousness for a while.
Yep.
Yeah, I think a lot of current Kickstarters owe quite a bit to Blood Rage in terms of the current model of what the epitomizes basically the perfect sort of Kickstarter product.
Cool. Jay,
this one was a hard one to keep out of the top 5, and then I realized I'm making a list of just these games are going to be classics, because this to me is like the best thematic Euro there is, and that would be Anachrony.
Yeah.
Anachrony is like the perfect combination of like overproduced, thematic.
Yep.
Like it's got everything that you could staple bad onto it, but it's not at all. It hits a home run with all of it. Because I mean, you're literally placing workers and gathering resources. You're going out into danger. The world is about to explode, and the game actually it happens. Like it happens. The board gets destroyed, and then it goes away. You're still trying to gather resources, and you're building up your little science area. It's got all these things going on that you just get swallowed up in the theme while you're playing this game, and you're thinking to yourself like, this is a crazy experience. It is definitely an overwhelming experience. It's not going to welcome people to the hobby at all, but it's definitely in the heart of people who love Euro games.
Sure.
And it perfectly represents the medium weight Euro game. Like it's right there, right dead in the middle. For some people, it might be a little heavier.
I was just going to say that.
It's a little heavier.
It's our middle, Jeremy.
But I'm serious. It's really like dead smack in the middle. Like if I said that's a medium weight Euro, you definitely want to check out. That's the one. And I mean, and on top of that, some of the best minis that are so ridiculous. They're not needed, but once you have them in your hands, you don't want to play without them.
Right.
I haven't seen
they're
Mr.
just
Fields yet.
most ridiculous components ever, but I love them. They're worth every single dollar.
Cool.
All right, my number 6 is a worker placement game that came out, I think, 2018. And this one is the first game from Delicious Games, and it's Underwater Cities. We've here at MVM have been round and round on this because Jeremy has his world-renowned kelp strategy. But we all love the game. We have a lot of fun with it. This game does a lot of interesting things, but like good worker placements, this one does one thing I think maybe even better than most of those. This game is one of those worker placement games where you definitely are sitting there waiting for your next turn going, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. You have very specific plans. Now, with that said, if someone does go there, it's not tragic. You can usually find something else that you can do. But man, there's always that one place that you're like, okay, I'm going to do this turn, and then this the next turn. And man, if that last peg doesn't happen, you're really regretting it and angry in a good way at the players across the table.
Yeah, to me, that game really came into its own with the expansion. I didn't put it on my list because I think it's a little heavier, and also I need to give it more plays with the expansion. But I think that really breathes new life into it and gives it some staying power that maybe I don't know if it had before. But the expansion is just so good.
Yeah, and again, like I said, my list has some of those things that I think a lot of people could play, but some of them are going to be more personal for sure.
For sure.
My number 6 is a game that I would challenge anybody to say, I don't like this game.
I don't like it.
Challenge accepted.
Santorini.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Santorini is like
Yeah.
the perfect two-player game. It really is.
It
It's
is.
super thematic. It's abstract enough to appeal to anybody, but also has enough flavor to really, really capture people's imagination. Now, the cool thing about this is that there are 80 different characters and they all play completely different. So you're never going to have the same game. I don't know, you can put in some kind of math cruncher, but there's got to be thousands of different combinations of ways you can play this. I've played New York, which is the new Santorini, and the original Santorini is still just a better game because of all those different things. You're using one character and you're learning how to use them. It's very, very simple to teach. It's very, very pretty. Like the package is just beautiful. The art's fantastic. It's from Mr. Cuddington, which is a family that does a lot of art for companies, and it's really, really pretty.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, it is a great game. I've recently talked to someone who said they didn't like that game.
Who?
I want
to meet that guy.
I am not going to say Rob's name out loud,
Down.
but no. But here's the thing:
Rob Ralph?
He's never played it with all of the different powers. So his first and only experience with it was just playing straight, plain Jane, basic Santorini.
Not fun.
It's not it's not bad, but it's nowhere near as fun as flipping over a new god and going, okay, now, you can win by jumping off of a second story.
Right.
That's crazy. Like it's so much fun playing that way. I am actually going to take my copy of Santorini the next time we get together and make him play it a few times, because I really think if someone doesn't like it, they probably just haven't played it with those god powers.
All right, number 5, right?
Number 5.
Number 5 for me is a little bit of a family game. This is Baron Park, which came out a couple years ago, and I fell in love with Baron Park immediately. I love, it's got that Juve style tile placement where you're putting the pieces down, covering different spots and comboing into different pieces, and really trying to optimize your Bear Park by placing tiles. It's a huge puzzle to solve, and I really like solving puzzles. And this is another one that has very, very few rules. You can teach this game in maybe 10 minutes. So anybody can pick up and play, and it seats a large number of players. The expansion did come out last year, I think, that added a little bit more complexity, which I enjoy. Maybe some people won't. They like the simple Baron Park experience. But definitely, if you have not played Baron Park, try it. Don't let the simplicity of the game fool you, because there's actually a lot of depth in there as well.
By the way, good luck finding Baron Park, because I had to reacquire Baron Park, and it was so hard to find it. I had to get it. I had to actually order from my local game store. I had to take them up on their offer to order it, and then when I wanted the expansion, I had to do that again. So
Nice.
it's a very hard game to find. It's always a low run, so when you do get a chance to get it. It is a great family game.
Yeah, and get me a copy too, because I only own the expansion.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I can't find the base game, but I have the expansion.
Somewhere out there, your partner has only the base game, and they're just waiting to play with you.
Ah. All right, Jeremy. What's your number 5?
Number 5. Oh boy, I just decided not to go with light games at all. Apparently, but Baron Park was on my list. Baron Park was on my list when I was creating my other list. This one is probably one of the go-to co-ops amongst solo co-op community. It is another asymmetric game, highly asymmetric.
Yes, I think I know.
Spirit Island.
Yeah,
Spirit
that's the one.
Yeah, Spirit Island is amazing. You are fighting against these natives, and they are trying to take the land over, and there's blight. But you are these spirits, these different forms of spirits, trying to protect the island, and you're basically moving them around, trying to control these areas and using your hand to kind of, unleash these powers, and you're getting stronger. And each one of them presents their own different puzzle, and they can get so ridiculously difficult to learn. Or they can be very base heavy of just like, hey, put your guy here, then play these cards and push people around and then knock these guys out. But what happens is it really encourages people to work together. Now, it will definitely push those those heavy gamers that are like, hey, do this, do that, do that. But what you find is people who really love this game, they can play it two-handed, solo, and people love that. It's a really good partners game too. So if you're just playing two-player, definitely a good partners game. Very good partners game, especially if you like heavier games. So even if you're not in a solo co-op, into co-op, this is the one, especially for couples, to play. Spirit Island, just fantastic game. And you can definitely tell it's going to be a classic because people will wait 3 years for it to arrive on Kickstarter and not talk bad about the company at all. So there you go. That's how you know. People will just wait. So.
All right, you guys ready for my number 5?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm gonna channel Kira as much as I possibly can here because I think she's the one of all of us who's probably played the most of this game. I didn't play it when it came out, and I think everyone here, Jeremy, I know, can attest to the fact that I've become absolutely obsessed with it in the last couple months, and that is Arkham Horror, the card game.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention the fact, not only am I obsessed with it, and I've literally bought every single possible thing available for it as of this week. I just finally got a couple more of the scenario packs. This clearly deserves a place on this list. This game is brilliant in so many ways, and it is come onto that sort of LCG scene, and I think it's probably, would everyone agree? I mean, is this the big LCG these days?
Marvel.
I would say,
Marvel.
The one that represents that part of the hobby. I think it represents the genre. Like, it's the new, because Lord of the Rings would be the previous one, right?
Yeah.
So this would be the new classic added to this, that based on our category. So,
I just love what this does, and for me personally, it's been fantastic because I've played it as I've said before with Alicia, my wife, and she loves it and digs it. We've taken a couple weeks off because we kind of like binged it one weekend, and I think that was a little too much. But we're gonna get back to it, I think, hopefully this weekend.
Cool. My number 5's already been mentioned. It's Wingspan. It's pretty amazing what Elizabeth did with that game, being her freshman game. It's kind of like what Pearl Jam did with 10, or I don't know, Led Zeppelin did with their inaugural, Led Zeppelin episode, or album. Like, this is just an amazing first game. I don't see this ever stopping. Like, I don't know how many birds there are in the world. How many birds are there?
A lot. There's a lot of
There's
birds.
a few. There's a few.
Like 100,000? I don't know, 50,000? Like, this could go on forever. And it's just a really, really good game. In fact, this is a game that I fought against that I didn't want to like it the first time that I heard about, just because it was birds. And I typically don't like a lot of the stuff that comes from Stonemaier Games, just because he usually has like a lot of race elements in his games, and I don't like games that end with a race element in them. But this game just stuck. It's another one of those games like Watergate that I've just played a ton of since it's been out. It's just a really, really solid game, and there's really nothing more I can say about it because it's won 1 million awards. David, you said everything needs to be said about it. It's good.
The new expansion's about to come out.
It's a classic for sure. Yeah, what is it called?
Oceania?
Oceania?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Fantastic.
All right, what are we up to? Number 4? All right.
4.
Number 4 for me is a little bit of a cheat. The original version of this game came out actually a while ago, and this is Takedo. However, the game kind of came out and just, what came and went. But a couple years ago, they re-released Takedo with the expansion in the collector's edition, which quickly became one of the most sought-after products. Even now, people are trying to get their hands on this Takedo special edition collector's set that came out a few years ago, and this thing is the definition of gorgeous. I mean, every single aspect of this collector's edition looks amazing. The minis look great, the components look great, the board looks great. It even came with a soundtrack CD that you could play while you were playing the game, and it plays like Takedo themed music. So I think they really went all in on this game, and this is something that I want to see more companies do. And it, for a lot of people, me included, this was our first experience with Tokaido. So while the game might be old, this is the version of Tokaido that people care about. I don't think people are looking for the old original printing, but this has become just such a popular piece that I think I really can't do this list without mentioning that.
Huh.
I just want to say that I'm not going to not disagree with you, Ryan. It's just that Tokaido came out before 2016.
That's what I just said.
Yep.
The original.
I'm not going to disagree with you.
So reprints count.
I'm just going to say 5,000 to 6,000 games come out a year.
Right. I'm making a special loophole for that expansion and collector's edition, because both of those things really came together to really make that game what it is in the hobby right now. That's the only reason. So
does this mean I can put golden
loophole?
No, that's it. That's the only one on I think on my list that's really that I use that kind of loophole for. But when I think back about the game is that collector's edition made such a splash when it came on the scene, and it was sold out immediately, and people still fight to try to get one. So I think that really is something that people are going to still be collecting, playing, and talking about for years.
Mine is going to be real quick. We already had.
I love Jeremy's reaction. Sorry, Jeremy.
I'll admit it's a
Tokaido.
I love it. Kind of so
all right, Jeremy Howard, you're up.
But quick thing about Tokaido, it was one of the first date games I played it on. I played it on a date with my wife, and we had one of the worst times playing games ever.
Oh, no.
I have a thing with that game.
Tokaido's taking
with
over our episode.
Yeah.
Right.
Everdell is my number 4.
Yep.
Everdell is just absolutely gorgeous. I did a complete flip on this game. I kind of actually did something I usually don't do, which is just judge a book by its cover. I decided to dispel this game and say, hey, it's all beauty. It's got nothing to it. And then I watched a couple people play it, and I got it to the table, and I was like, of course, this is gorgeous. That's not what we're talking about here. Gameplay over everything. And I was just really surprised at how good that game can be and how much of a game you can make it.
Yeah.
If you learn how to play those cards right and extend your rounds and stuff like that, yes, that can lead to people having a lot more of a round than you will ever have. But at least you get to actually learn what the game can potentially be. And, as you add more and more to it, it just gets more and more gorgeous and cutesy. Mm-hmm. But the gameplay gets better. I haven't played the Spire Crest, but everything else, just fantastic. The fair is awesome. All that stuff, man. It's just, that game's a gift that keeps on giving. And I'm just thinking it has to be added to that big box at some point.
Yeah.
It's going to pay off, it'll have that big payoff moment like Alien Frontiers. It'll just have this, here's Everdell with 10 expansions in it, that kind of thing. Yeah. So there you go.
All right. My number 4. I'm just going to say the game's name because I'm almost certain this will be talked about before the end of the episode. Terraforming Mars. Next.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
This will be on J-House list.
Terraforming
Mars. Gonna be on mine.
Terraforming Mars. Like I said, if it isn't, we'll come back to it. But I'm just going to leave it at that. Terraforming Mars is my number 4. Jeremy, you go ahead with your number 4.
Well, I did not pick Terraforming Mars, so I figured most of you guys would. And I'm okay with Terraforming Mars. I struggle with the art. I can't get past the art. I still like the game.
That Pets card is fantastic.
No, it needs a revamp. Anyway, my number 4 is Pandemic Legacy Season. Can you guys guess?
Two,
probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm the only one here that's played Legacy Season 3, and I have a review. I promise it's coming up, guys. These guys know I've been working on this review for a while. It's actually coming out on October 22nd, I think. And I think there's already a couple reviews out there about the game, but I wanted to give myself some time to really kind of digest what I played. And I'll just spoil it right now. Season 2 is the best. I love Season 2. I love it for the exploration. I love it for how you are expanding the board as you go. I think the story was really smart, and it was the conclusion of them because Season 3 is actually the beginning of how it all started. Yeah. I'm not going to spoil anything about the gameplay in Season 3. I'll let you guys discover that for yourself. But if I were to play one of them, And this is coming from someone who does not own a single Pandemic in his collection. I don't have any Pandemic games. I don't like Pandemic as a game, but I love the Legacy games because they've taken that system and really developed something cool with it. And I love Legacy games in general. And I think this is probably the best Legacy game, and that's Pandemic Legacy Season 2. Play it if you haven't, and if you don't like Pandemic games, still give it a shot.
I think 2 is definitely better than 1. I mean, I'm with you on that. And also, 2 is one of the only Legacy games, like one of the first ones where you can actually miss entire portions of the game, and that's like perfectly acceptable. There was whole areas of the world that I never even explored in Season 2, which I think is really unique that you can be able to do that. All right, but we're going to go on to number 3, right?
Yep.
Number 3 for me, David, this is Terraforming Mars for me. I don't know who else has it on their list, but I agree with you. I don't know how much needs to be said about Terraforming Mars. A lot of people that are watching have played it. A lot of people are probably nodding their heads right now because, yes, I don't think you can have this conversation without even mentioning Terraforming Mars. It's just so much. There's so much to the game. So many different styles of gamer is attracted to this game. Granted, Jeremy is right. It is not the prettiest game to look at, which I think is even more of a testament to how good the game is.
Agreed.
That I'm still drawn to it, even though it is not the prettiest looking game in my collection. And I'm very much looking forward to the big box. We talked about big box for Everdell. This one's getting one. It's coming out, I think, next year, and it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to be able to, store up all my Terraforming Mars stuff. And I'll be playing this game well into the future.
Agreed, right, Jay Howe?
Hey, moving on. My number 3.
You might be the only person who really has such strong negative feelings towards Terraforming Mars.
The thing is that I know how to take myself out of it. It is a modern classic. It just is. It just is. It just is.
You know what, Jeremy Howard? You're a modern classic, sir.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I age fantastically well.
Wait, you mean you're not 32?
All right. Here we go. So if you ask me what's a good deck builder, what's your favorite deck builder? I always say Aeon's End, next question. All right. Yeah. So Aeon's End is the gift that keeps on giving. All right. This game, I can't describe how awesome it is. You almost just have to play it because it's one simple thing that makes this thing you don't shuffle. That's it. One simple thing. That's it. You just flip the cards over. And what it does is, for you, it takes these two portal people here. They're fighting off different monsters that have all different mechanisms from destroying your city. All right, and you're deciding whether you're going to basically take out the monster and its minions, or you're trying to defend your town. So you got these two things going on. But you, in a Dominion style, are getting cards and adding them to your deck to fight. And the cool part about this game is that you can create the synergy between you two, where you guys are getting these cards, and then you get everything lined up, and your part of the deck is coming, and you start tweaking your spells, and you're like, oh, it's coming right now. It's about to come. Here we go, guys. Here we go. You get this one, you get that one, you get that one, and then boom! And it feels so good to pull that off. Does not matter if you're playing by yourself or you're playing with 3 other people. It's just it's a high communication game. And yeah, it's just a really good solo play game. People highly recommend it. It's a good 2-handed game. And you can add all these different monsters to each other and all these different different spell guys to each other. And they also have a legacy game. I mean, honestly, you can start with any box. That's just how good this is.
The part that I loved about that game was, I think the same thing David liked was the monsters. I mean, it felt very much asymmetry. Not only the asymmetry, but they really focused on making each of those monsters feel like a boss from Diablo or a boss from Demon Souls, or a game like that where they all had really unique mechanisms. And it was really just you against that boss and what they had. There was no dungeon travel. It was just you against the boss and whatever he had in his deck. And they were all really, really unique. And I love that part. That was very cool.
Yeah, that's definitely worthy.
Just instant yes when I see that when those come in. That's a great game.
All right. Great game. Are you guys ready for number 3 from me? All right. So I'm just going to preface this by saying this is a personal choice.
Uh-oh.
this isn't going to be an all-time classic for many people because right now a lot of people don't give it the recognition it deserves. But this is, in my opinion, the best thing since Castles of Burgundy, and it is Pulsar 2849.
Yeah.
This game is, in my opinion, if whenever we do most underrated games, this game is going to be near, if not at the top of my list. I think this game is fantastic. I have so much fun playing it. And like I said, I compared it to Castle Burgundy because I really do feel in many respects, I kind of view this as like Castles of Burgundy 2.0. It doesn't play, obviously, just like Castles of Burgundy, but you are taking 2 dice and doing things with the 2 dice that you take. But you're drafting them, which is sort of the extra layer at the beginning of all this thing. And then on top of it, instead of being all these different buildings and things you're placing on your board, there's just a million different things you can do in this game to score points. Love it. It's not the prettiest game in the world.
No, it's not at all.
But the game system is absolutely fantastic. I would love to see them take this system, retheme it, make it really pretty, and have a really big success on their hands.
If this list had been my favorite games of the last 5 years, that would be pretty close to the top.
Yeah.
I mean, it's undisputed that that's a great game. I'm with you. I wish more people were playing it, more people were talking about it, spreading the love.
It should be a modern classic. That's what I'm trying to say. Jeremy?
Yeah.
What's your number 3?
My number 3 is probably the most when I speak of thematic games, there's 2 games I always talk about: War of the Ring and Star Wars Rebellion. Star Wars Rebellion was released in 2016. It makes the list. It is probably the most thematic game that you can play if you're a Star Wars fan or just a fan of thematic games. You're either playing the Empire or the Rebellion, and you're doing exactly everything that you would want to do from the movies. The same thing as blowing up the Death Star, trying to capture, the rebels, or everything you can imagine is in this game. And it's got the whole hidden base element to it. It's got an expansion to it. It's really, really good. It's one of those games. Actually, all the games that I look at on my list are probably games that I'll never get rid of. It does have a pretty heavy learning curve. This is probably not a classic in the sense that that David just mentioned. You're not going to introduce this to everyone. You're probably not going to introduce Pulsar to everyone. But if you are into Star Wars, if you're into thematic games, if you're into heavier 2-player games, you cannot beat Star Wars Rebellion.
Yeah, no, completely agree.
Is that on your list, Ryan? It's got to be on your list.
It wasn't. So again,
how can that not be on your list?
Again, well, for one thing, I knew it was going to be on yours, and I really tried to minimize my crossover. But also, like I said, my list I focused more on games that I could recommend to anyone, and the playtime and learning curve for Rebellion is a little on the higher end. There are I would, any kind of hardcore gamer, any Star Wars fan, I would give Rebellion to. So it was very close to making it onto my list. I approached the list a little differently. All right, so number 2 for me is something that people in the comments have been waiting for me to say. That's Grand Austria Hotel. I actually, I love Lorenzo as well, Jeremy, don't get me wrong. I love every single game that these designers have done, but for me, Grand Austria just sticks out. I really like the dice drafting element, and there's a lot more player interaction in Lorenzo, and a lot of people are going to like that. There's a lot less player interaction in Grand Austria, which is why I like Grand Austria. But I don't know if any other Euro game where 5 years later people are still so hyped about a game as they are about Grand Austria, and with the expansion coming out soon, and I think people are just losing their mind over this expansion for a Euro game that's 5 years old. That doesn't happen a lot in this industry. Usually you'll get the game out, you'll get the expansion 1 year later, and then nobody will talk about it again. Even games that I love, like Marco Polo, and even Marco Polo 2, I just don't put them at the same level of global love that I put Grand Austria. I just think it's a pinnacle game achievement, even if it's not my favorite one.
I agree. Well, I was gonna say more than I agree, everybody. And then Jeremy said something, so we talked over each other a little bit.
I agree.
I will say more. I agree, comma. One thing I wanted to say about this when we were talking about Lorenzo earlier is I do feel personally that this one, for me, more so than Lorenzo, is easy to teach, not because of the mechanics themselves, because I do think Lorenzo mechanically is simple, but the theme really helps this one in terms of teaching. I've played this with people who don't play games as much, and just the fact that you have that hotel, you're closing doors, all these things that seem like people can relate to more than you can relate to whatever's happening in Lorenzo.
Right.
Make it a little easier from a theme standpoint. And I find more and more that's one of the big things that really helps me teach a game is if people can really relate to that theme. And that, I think, is why theme is important.
I was going to say too that I think that you're right when it's 2-player games. Like I think you said that. Maybe it's in my head, but I think that Grand Austria Hotel is a better 2-player game than Lorenzo.
Somebody
Lorenzo feels better. Well, I'm not in the comments, but Lorenzo feels better as a 3-player game just because of the interaction that you get up on those towers. And Grand Austria Hotel, in my opinion, is a great 2- and 3-player game, but not so much a 4-player game because of the way that drafting mechanic works. But regardless, you're right. We're also going to have a preview of the expansion on our channel very, very soon. I think we're going to do a live playthrough of the new expansion as well.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
That's going to be fun.
I've never played Grand Austria Hotel.
What?
Okay. Can we cut his feed right now?
All right.
What have you played, and what would you say is your number 2 modern classic, Jeremy?
Well, it just happens to be one of the smallest games. You know, people haven't heard of this one before. It's going to be underappreciated, just like Pulsar, and that would be Gloomhaven. All right.
Interesting choice.
So, yeah, I know. I found it. I was like, oh my god, I got to move this little game out of the way. Gloomhaven definitely. We've already said enough about how great it was, but for me, that was a big game for me when I was like starting to really get in. I was all the way in already. That was my biggest game, bigger than Kingdom Death Monster, which is hard to do. And that game, I tell you, just that simple hand card system and the puzzle of each character that you have is just so slick, and it's gonna hold up as long as they keep finding crafty ways to do it. And I can tell you right now, as someone who played Frosthaven, the Frosthaven stuff, believe me, you got a lot to look forward to from this game, this series of games. I think I'll just leave it right there. It is one of the best games. It's my second favorite game of all time, Gloomhaven. So,
all right.
Can't argue with its impact.
No, obviously. I mean, I figured that would be on the list. I have played a little bit of it, but not too much. And I wasn't sure how shareable it is with the masses. Like it feels, it's a pretty big, big meaty game.
Jaws is going to be the one that pulls everybody. Jaws of a Lion, but I always say like that Gloomhaven is a lifestyle game. You know, it's one that you're just going to play. That's what you're going to be playing. Or it's the day that you dedicate outside of your game group day.
Right.
Like it's like the other day. But yeah, the Jaws of the Lion though breaks that mold. You can definitely play it with somebody. You can play it a game night.
No, it's a good pick.
All right, David, number 2.
My number 2 is probably the most oddball game on this list, and I'm not building it up like Jeremy just did to do a rope-a-dope. This one is Cryptid. In my opinion, Cryptid is the best deduction game, period, hard stop. Haven't played anything before it, haven't played anything past it that's as good of a deduction game. Now, I'm not talking social deduction. I'm just talking pure deduction game. There's games, I think Unlock would do this, that make you feel smart. And when you figure out a puzzle and unlock it, you feel smart. And I can tell you, at least in my experience, when I've been on the winning end of Cryptid and everyone else at the table is like, what? You just feel smart. And you can say, yeah, this is you, this is you, this is you. And if there's people at the table who are like bewildered, it just makes people feel smart. Now, the flip side is when you lose, you don't feel so smart. But
Exactly.
it is a brilliant game. I remember still very vividly the day Jeremy and I played it out of the box. I think, Kira, you were there too. And we first thought there was a handful of spots that were possible based on the way the game worked. And then when we realized that depending on how you set it up, there's just one, we were like, what? I love Cryptid. Again, probably underrated. If you haven't played it, you got to try it.
Cool.
We got to go back into the underrated because that game, is a great game.
Yeah,
and
I love it.
I'm just so glad you said that so people can hear it, because that's a great game.
It's very misleading because the cover is such a spectacular cover, and then you
Yeah.
open it up. I think that's the part that people can't get
Yeah.
past. They look at the inside components, you're like,
Oh,
nah, this is way too
look
abstract.
at this sketch. Look at this
Yeah.
mock-up
Super
of the
abstract.
board.
Yeah.
It is abstract.
All right, my number 2. I'm surprised no one picked this. Great Western Trail. It, in my
I knew
opinion,
you would.
I
Yeah.
had it on my other list of
it's in my opinion still Pfister's best game. I mean, I like all the other games he makes, but Great Western Trail is just incredible. Like even the expansion's incredible. Very, very good game. Shadowboxed
Oh, I
it,
love
love
the
it. Like
expansion.
it's, yeah, I remember. Yeah, you and I had a very long experience with the expansion though.
Trying to play it
But,
at a Halloween party. I
yeah,
remember that.
with
Yeah.
2 new players.
Uh-huh. Well,
Yeah, it was
Kira was one of those new players.
It was like a 3-hour game. But anyway,
It
yeah.
was.
In my opinion, it's Pfister's best game. It's probably one of the best, most well-known Euro games in the past 5 years.
For sure. For sure.
For sure.
question.
All right, Jay.
All right, number 1. Are we gonna do we have a little drum roll for number 1?
Oh yeah, you're one.
Yeah. All right, number 1 for me is, when I think of classic board game, this is the one, and this is Seven Wonders Duel. This game came out right around 5 years ago. It was like right at the mark. But it
Wait,
was
when
one
did
of
this
the
come out?
first. It came out 2015, I believe.
That's breaking the rules.
Well, you said 5 years.
Brian, cut his feed.
You
I'm
said
not
5
kidding.
years, and that was definitely within the 5-year limit. Anyway, that was Seven Wonders Duel is the game that started this whole duel. I don't even know what you want to call it. Theme that's been running through board games. Everybody has a 2-player duel version of their game now, but that all started with Seven Wonders Duel, and it was the first thing I'd ever played that took a board game that I loved, which was Seven Wonders, which was definitely an older classic, and turned it into a 2-player game. And I thought, how could this possibly be a thing? And not only was it super impressive, it was super fun, and it still to this day remains my favorite
better.
2-player game.
Maybe even better.
I think it's better than regular. I think it's better than Seven Wonders. I love Watergate, and that could have made it on my list too. But I think Seven Wonders Duel is just the epitome of 2-player games, and yeah, it will always be fantastic.
It got way better with the expansion. Yeah, there's a new expansion too.
Yeah, I think the new expansion even gives you 1 more win condition, which is awesome. I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Jay, what's your number 1?
So this is totally just me really just being a solo co-op gamer, big time. And this game represents like quality, like ridiculous production, absolutely everything. And it is Too Many Bones.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that on there.
It is absolutely insane how great that game is. It is the true adventure game. It's got this asymmetry. It's good co-op. It's great even like true solo, where you just play with one character and go on a journey. You've got all these different bosses. There's different cards of how your adventure will play out, so you don't really get the same thing twice. You got a big enough deck to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I mean, that game, man, it's brutal. It's super brutal.
Don't you think the components are kind of cheap, though?
Absolutely. You know, sometimes
You're right.
I think to myself, I'm like, might want to dial it back a little bit here.
There is no company that spends they don't, the guy from Jurassic Park who says spared no expense, John Hammond. They are the John Hammond of the board game industry. I remember every time we talk to them, they're just it's like one of their goals is to what crazy thing can we do with our components for the next game?
I could spill basically water on everything that I have in that box. It'd be fine. It'd be fine. Like, that's how great they've done this game.
Oh, do they even use paper? Everything.
No,
yeah,
it's
everything.
like all
the
plastic.
cards you can pour water on.
Uh-huh.
They even have a funny video where they do that. Like, they spill stuff all over their, and that's the thing. It's just cool adventures. The gear locks look kind of weird and funky. I love it. I just love it. It's a gift that keeps on giving. I did the video for the Trove Test. You can tell how much of a fanboy I am. But yeah, I think that one is the gold standard moving forward. People love it. It's pricey, but I love it.
Cool.
My number 1, cannot believe it hasn't been mentioned by Ryan yet. And this is the easiest one in my opinion for this list overall, and that is Azul. And I'm going to go with the original Azul. This thing is a classic. Now they've done more since then, and I think Summer Pavilion, I probably personally like the mechanics of Summer Pavilion better than the original, but Azul is absolutely probably the biggest evergreen that has come out in the last 5 years.
Yeah,
it's the true number one. It's the true number one.
It's such an easy choice for this modern classic sort of game. Yeah. And again, it's so simple, so easy to teach. It's lightning in a bottle. So Azul was my number one.
My number one's already been mentioned. It's Baron Park. I still think Baron
number one.
I did not expect that.
Well, I think it's also the best tile placement game out there. Like, there's been a lot that have come and gone. I mean, there's a lot of Uwe games, Patchwork, and games like Isle of Cats, which are all really good games. But Baron Park is the one that always draws me back. It's just a really, really, really good game. So, I mean, Ryan, you already mentioned it. Not much more I can say about it. It's a fantastic game.
Just keep telling everyone to buy it.
When I first wrote my list, 1 and 2. That was 1 and 2.
And I actually think I think the expansion is. Ryan, did you say you thought it was okay? Like you don't?
No, I really like the expansion. I just think for some gamers it might add a little bit more complexity for like a beginner game, but I love the expansion.
I don't think it adds too much.
That game down so much that it just literally is just putting the tiles down. No race for the scoring tiles. You could just like Calico now. Like you could just take all the stuff out of it and just be like, we're gonna place tiles. Like that's it.
That's a puzzle. Like that is, you give me a puzzle, I want to solve it. And an optimization puzzle like Baron Park, man, that's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
What a game, man.
Yeah.
What a game. What do you guys? So you guys, I know we're closing up our list. Do you have any off the top of your head where you're just like, this should be on there, but I got to get down to 10? I was thinking about some of those random ones. Like I have like Raccoon Tycoon, I think is one of those games.
Yeah.
What?
Or you think Raccoon Tycoon is I mean, it's a good game.
I think it's a good game. Well, Barnes and Noble says so.
I probably if I had one, and this just actually occurred to me. It's not a game for everyone, but it's climbed up the charts so quickly. Nemesis would probably be one of the games that I think would potentially be on this list.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's so many great games, and a lot of the ones that I had on my list of like recommendations or list of like runner-ups, you guys all said. Azul was one of the big ones there. Great Western Trail, I knew Jeremy would say. So I think we covered some great games.
The only ones I would have said that were very, very close were Whitehall Mystery, which is Letters from Whitechapel, a smaller condensed version. Which I think is a really good deduction game. And then and then Welcome To, which I still consider to be probably the best roll and write outside of maybe the pinball game, which is really, really good. But Welcome To is just it's fantastic roll and write.
Any one of those games could have been on. It's just hard. It's hard to come up with the 10. I could have given you a top 50.
I have to say, I think we all did a pretty good job of staying away from each other's lists. There was a lot less crossover than I expected.
Yeah. So I think most of us did a great job of staying within 2016 for.
I was just told
three of us anyway.
5-year-old games. You just
circa 2012.
I was just told games that are 5 years old. That's all. Wasn't given any dates. Just 5 years old.
There's still some great games on the table.
Before we wrap up, I do want to mention that our next Chit Chat, we'll start announcing our next Chit Chat at the end of each of these. Next time is going to be a Essen one. We're going to talk about the games that we feel are going to be strong at Essen. Now, note that there's not an Essen this year, obviously, so there's not going to be as many new titles. One thing I'll mention as well is that right after that weekend following the next Chit Chat, it's going to be the 17th and 18th. That is when we're doing our 2-day live stream of Essen titles. And I'll just mention a couple of them right now, just to kind of wet your whistle a little bit. We have Bonfire, which is the new one from Stefan Feld. We have Seastead. We have Prada. You just mentioned Delicious Games. That is Suchi's next game. So it's Prada Caput Regina. We have Hallertau, which is Uwe Rosenberg's next game. We have Trois Dice. We may even play the Grand Austria expansion on that live stream. And a lot of other games that we'll mention as we go. But tune in on the 17th and 18th. We'll have prizes, of course, just like we did last year, both for Gen Con and Essen. So tune in. And Jay Howe, you're coming to join us, right?
Oh, yeah, baby.
All right.
y'all won't be there. Yes, sir. I'm gonna be there. I might be bringing some nice things with me. I might be bringing some treats with me.
Nice.
Oh.
Thanks,
All
guys, for joining us. Hope you guys enjoyed our top 10 list. Thanks, Kira, who's off screen, ran the stream for us tonight. If you guys have any questions about any of the games that we commented about or talked about tonight, make them in the comments below. And just make a comment at all, because you'll be entered to win a copy of Fort. And until next time, we'll see you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, people.